always feel like a little kid in this chair. I don't reach the floor. It's tough being this short. Everybody ready? Good afternoon. Welcome to the April the 5th regular meeting of the Community Redevelopment Agency. The meeting will now come to order. Will everybody stand for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Biondi.
Here.
Brantley.
Here.
Kine.
Here.
Gebhardt.
Here.
Slaughter.
Here.
5 present.
Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can you please note that I'm here? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. We need an approval of the February 1st regular meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
We need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. We need a motion to approve the special meeting from March the 3rd.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Citizens input. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on any subjects in the CRA? Seeing none, we'll just go on to business. There is nothing in the consent agenda. We don't have any unfinished business, so we will go on to new business. And the first order of new business is the CRA's special event sponsorship application. Is anybody here to speak to that?
Sure, I'm going to have Ms. Ramey.
Yes.
What's the topic for us?
Today we have the application from the City of Cape Coral Parks and Recreation Department. This will be the free concert in the park 2. This will be held in Four Freedoms Park on Sunday, April the 30th. This is a new event. We recently approved a comparable event, but due to inclement weather, that event was postponed and will be held in May. So the second event will precede the first event because of scheduling. They do anticipate over 1,000 attendees, and the Cape Coral Special Event Division is requesting a sponsorship in the amount of $5,000. Do we have anyone from Parks?
Would you like to speak, Todd?
CRA Board, Todd King, Special Events Coordinator. First of all, the support from the CRA Board has been definitely measured in the bike night events and the things that you're already doing for special events in that particular area. And we just think this is a continuation to help us build some of those activities down there. The free concert in the park obviously is lacking revenue channels because we want it to be free. We want folks to come down to that area and then filter off into your businesses in the CRA and grow that space as well. So we're looking forward to potentially having the support for these free concerts in the park. We've targeted the CRA because it is an impactful way of impacting your economy down there. So that's what we're presenting.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
I have one question. Todd.
Yep.
In regards to using hard-packed areas like farmers market and that, do you ever worry that there's a certain capacity or size of an event where essentially I worked at a community where some of the grounds became trampled upon And that's really a beautiful park back in there. So in other words, are you finding that certain size event or certain size events just work perfect for that venue? But if it's a little bigger, then you're steering them over to more facilities that can handle the higher capacity.
Sure, so certainly in the capacity of a bike night, which is about 18,000 people, the asphalt and the harder grounds is better suited for that, and being a street rally. In the park area, when we consider what we're doing in Four Freedoms, that's not an event every weekend that's going to have, I would imagine, impact on the turf or any of the foliage and the growth. It's less events, but it's the right venue for that event, because being in a park creates kind of a little bit more of the Bimini Basin, and some of the water and some of the green spaces are important for those kinds of free concerts in the park. It's a program that's used all over the country. Various parks and recreation departments support those, and we just think that's a good fit for that. Obviously, parking in the downtown area is always a challenge, and those challenges are being addressed with some of the new growth that's going on down there. But at the end of the day, we think this particular location for our attendance anticipation is just right.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one. Are you gonna have vendors?
Well, we're planning on some food trucks and some small type of vending going on, but the idea is a bring your own. We anticipate folks bringing a cooler or their own food products, and just enjoying a blanket on the turf and enjoying the concert.
So it's similar to the old Taste of the Cape that got so big that they moved that
Well,
to Tarpon
yes,
Point.
and-
So I mean, I wish the stage was still there in the hill, and I know that's been removed. So I'm all for doing, starting it up small, and hopefully it will grow.
Well, I mean, if it maintains an intimate level, it still has impact in the CRA. It's something going on, it's an activity down there, and certainly if it grows beyond the capacity of that particular park, we'll look at something else to maybe move that to another area, but bring something else in that might start a little bit small. The goal here is to keep the growth going down in your district.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. King, since the CRA is sponsoring this event, is there an opportunity to work with businesses in the CRA to either display their merchandise or to sell their merchandise at this event?
Certainly, in any of the events that CRA supports us on, if a business reaches out to us and they're in the CRA district, we certainly make room for them or try to find a way to get them in that, yes.
Can your staff work with our communications staff, assuming that the CRA board approves this, in reaching out to our businesses in the CRA to let them know that this concert is coming up and there might be opportunities for them to participate?
Sure, and I mean, we still keeping it intimate. We don't want to overwhelm it with 1,000 vendors, but we certainly will try to manage the number that fits with the size audience and the activity.
And again, the reason for that is if the CRA is sponsoring this event, rather than having, I'm not suggesting anything's wrong with food trucks, but if we could get one of our local vendors to, like, let's say, supply refreshments and things like that, rather than a food truck, and again, the investment the CRA board is making is still being kept
Well,
within the
I would love Nice Guys Pizza to be out there because I'm hooked. Oh, wait, I didn't see you there, Greg. Yes, certainly we will work with our CRA and the communications department to make that opportunity available and try to keep it within the family.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I make the motion to approve.
Second?
Call the roll, please.
Biondi,
Aye.
Brantley. Aye. Gebhardt,
Aye.
Kine,
Aye.
Slaughter.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes and the motion carries.
Thank you. Now, we will discuss the 2023 budget and funding priorities.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I mentioned to you at your last meeting, I think it was last month, we asked for you to schedule this meeting to assist us in preparing the budget for our next fiscal year. As I mentioned last month, the City Council has made a requirement on staff that we submit a preliminary budget by June 1st, so which means that we've got some work to do in order to meet that deadline. So we asked you to come in this month to have a conversation with us today. So you're not approving your budget today. You're going to give us input, And then we're going to go back and crunch the numbers and put together the formal proposed budget for the CRA that you will vote on at your next meeting in May. And then that will be transmitted to the city council as part of the overall preliminary budget that we'll be submitting for FY23. So I'm going to turn it over to your financial services director, Mark Mason. He will be supplemented by a variety of staff from every single department that we have in the city to answer specific questions regarding some ideas that you may want to consider for possible inclusion in the budget. Those are staff-driven ideas. Certainly, we are open to any ideas that any of you may have with regard to allocating funds to specific projects and initiatives. So, Mr. Mason, the floor is yours.
Thank you. As soon as it flips over, we'll talk. All right. So, a couple of things we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk a little introduction of the fiscal year 2023 to 2027 budget proposal. Then we're going to talk to you about some projects, both public works type projects as well as capital improvement projects that we want to consider with some of the excess revenue after expenses, of course, that will be available to you for next fiscal year and beyond. So the discussion of some of these items, we recommend that you wait until we're completely done, and then we can go back and we can discuss the merits of each one of them afterwards. So overall, this is the requested budget. You'll see from revenue-wise, we are expecting an increase in overall revenue for not only the city, but also the CRA. It's about $300,000 increase. Rents and royalties, we're expecting it to come back down in line with what we've seen in the past, as well as miscellaneous revenue. We get that periodically, including interest income, et cetera, on current resources. The interfund transfer that you see, this is our portion of the tax increment revenues that the city collects and transfers into the CRA fund. We don't have a general fund advance this time around. This $10,350,000 was the transfer in from the Cove, for the Cove project. We still expect that the Cove project hopefully will get off the ground before the end of this fiscal year, in which case we'll transfer the money into the CRA and then turn around and escrow it with a bank that will come back to us every single time that they want to do a draw for the project. So we still expect that the project hopefully will still get off the ground by the end of this fiscal year. And let's see. So the cash balance is brought forward for 2023. Right now, you don't really have any cash balances because you applied the cash balances from the previous year that we came forward and talked to you about at the final budget hearing for last year. So on the personnel side, you see an increase in the personnel services side. This includes the trades worker position that you approved previously or earlier this year. We're in the process we'll be doing a budget amendment to add it into this fiscal year's budget, but we're taking advantage and putting it into the entire budget for next year. We also have on operating side, when you compare operating from year to year, going back to the 21 revised budget, to the current budget and included in the 2022 original budget, the numbers are basically the same. There's very little change. One of the things to take into account for personnel, with operating, is that we've reduced the grant programs. These are the programs like what you just approved. Last year, we set aside $60,000 for the bike nights. We've determined that the cost of the bike nights is closer to $5,000 a bike night. So we're reducing the overall cost for the CRA down to about $20,000, representing 4 bike nights at $5,000 each. At the same time, we're keeping $335,000 in for economic development incentives. The board just recently approved the entire development incentive program that the city has also approved. So we want to be ready and available when somebody comes looking for the incentives for the CRA. In addition, we include in the transfers out the first year's debt payments on the $10,350,000, so that's also included in 2023. Although the project for the Cove will not be done, this was part of the stipulated agreement with the council that we would immediately start paying it back, regardless of whether the project had been completed or not. And this leaves, right now, approximately $1 million that's available for you, the board, to utilize for any particular projects we're looking for. We do have some recommendations for you, some suggestions that both the interim Public Works Director, as well as the CIP Director, will get up here and talk about here shortly. Let's see. Just as a reminder to you, these are the projects that we currently have in place. The number of the projects are in process. We still have available budget on some of these. We have available budget remaining on the property acquisition, but we continue to target certain properties, within the CRA for purchase. And I'm going to turn this over now to the Public Works Department to discuss some of their proposed improvements to the CRA.
Good afternoon, Board. Mike Gilchizen, Interim Public Works Director. We have a series of potential projects that you may be able to apply the $1 million towards. In summary, real quick, we have a median landscaping project on Palm Tree Boulevard that would go basically from the bottom all the way up to Wildwood. We have one, there are two small medians that are already curbed on Del Prado, just south of Cape Coral Parkway, that are within the CRA district. We have some concrete sidewalks that we could put on the south side of Miramar, some improvements to the Iguana parking lot, possible painting or wrapping of traffic signal mast arms, additional parking on Lafayette and Vincennes, and then some artwork at Founders Park. So real quickly, we'll go through kind of briefly what those projects would look like and where they are for your consideration. So here we have, if you look at the map on the right side, there's a little red segment of Palm Tree Boulevard, basically going from Country Club Boulevard all the way up to Wildwood. It's approximately 1.8 miles. This project would exceed the amount of money you have budgeted or would have at the $1 million, but it could be a multi-phase project that we could tackle over a couple of years. The estimate for this is right now $2.4 million. Then on Del Prado Boulevard, just south of Cape Coral Parkway, there are two small medians right before the bend. Those already have curbing on them, so they are what we consider in the city low-hanging fruit to install landscaping. We could probably do these two medians basically for $80,000, about $40,000 a piece. On the south side of Miramar Street, basically from Coronado to Cape Coral Street, as you know, right now there's a lot of condominiums, some houses. There is no sidewalk there. So Public Works is asking here we could go in with the city crews and install sidewalks on the south side of the road. And those would be our typical 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk. Not adding curb, not adding gutter, just kind of the concrete sidewalk that we do on throughout the city. That would be $413,000. We have the Iguana parking lot improvements. The idea here would be to take this and enhance it similar to what we have at Club Square. Based on the estimates of costs from last year, milling and overlay would be $400,000, landscaping to add that around the entire parking lot, $200,000, refreshing and upgrading, or not refreshing, but upgrading the dumpster enclosure fencing would be $60,000. And then because it was from last year's, basically a year ago, we've put a 20% cost adjustment on that, so that comes in at just under $800,000. And then we have possible signal arms and mast arm painting or wrapping. We tried to find somebody or somebody who's done some wrapping recently. We weren't able to find any, but we were able to get some quotes on painting. But if you'd like to do this, we would look to wrap them first. But there is, interestingly enough, at Del Prado and Southeast 47 Terrace, that pole and mast arm is brown. It's the only one that we know of that's painted in the city. And it's that picture in the top left. It's kind of like a milk chocolate brown color. The idea would be to go throughout all the signals in the CRA and either paint them a brown, a green, or a black. There was a bid released a couple years ago in Naples for this. We've kind of rolled it forward. For the signals on Del Prado, we're looking at just under $60,000, and for the rest of the CRA would be about $112 for a total brought forward, from the 2020 pricing to about $170,000 to do all the signals in the CRA. And then this is an example of that matte brown. This is downtown Fort Myers where they have the black. And then here's an example of the green. We at the same time, we've been working with the executive director to try and find ideas and opportunities to increase parking, both on-street and off-street parking. This project we think we could do relatively cheaply, which would just be some realignment of the existing cross-section on the road and some painting and striping. So with this, we can pick up just south of Cape Coral Parkway on Vincennes. We can look on the west side of the road to put some angular parking on street by shifting the alignments, and we could probably do that for $50,000 with in-house work and materials. Then there's some possibility of putting some public artwork in the center, kind of roundabout walking area at Founders Park. What that is, and obviously would be forthcoming, but that's where we would look to put it, right in the center of that walking area. And nope, this is Paul. So these projects here are a little more extensive, involve utilities and electrical connections. So I'll turn that over to Paul Klingen to discuss these.
Thank you. Paul Klingen, Director of Capital Improvements. So there's, the theme here is these are all related to the 47th and the Lafayette streetscapes. So here you have the Hampton Inn, and there always was a discussion about when we did the original 47 Terrace, how far to the west do we go? So there is a possibility of extending the streetscape with curb and gutter, the brick, the planters, the street lights, the fiber, etc. on the north side, only down to Hampton Inn. And so for design, permitting, construction, that's about $900,000 to do that. Then there's been discussion in the past to extend Lafayette Street, streetscape from Cape Coral Street to Del Prado. And you can see with that would be about $1 million with the same brick pavers, planters, street lights that are there. And then, unfortunately, this particular section of Lafayette for the streetscape that was done under the brick pavers, there's an exfiltration stormwater system, and irrigation was never extended to all those trees. So that was one thing we looked at, is whether or not to extend irrigation to the landscaping there, and we wouldn't go under the brick pavers. It would have to be in the road. And there's other utilities there, and that would be about $750,000. So there's a summary of the three projects related to streetscape on 47th and Lafayette.
Discussion, questions?
Madam Chair, before we turn it back over to the board for consideration, I just wanted to throw something out, food for thought. And that is that, staff has identified for you today some large-scale projects that will pretty much eat away at the $1 million that you have available to allocate this year. We've identified some projects that actually exceed your ability to complete in 1 year, but you can go ahead and at least, as Mr. Ilchizen said, phase those projects in. But I think we've also identified several projects that are low-hanging fruit, right? It provides you an opportunity to make a quick and immediate impact to the aesthetics within the CRA. You can knock those out of the way. For example, the graffiti and landscaping on Del Prado, the Vincennes parking realignment, things of that nature. I want to also propose, or throw out there for consideration, if I can find my notes somewhere here, one or two additional projects. They were here. One of which the board has previously, authorized us last year to move forward with a rebranding campaign for 47th Terrace. And last year you did a budget amendment, but because we were not able to complete that project last year, those funds did not roll over. And so therefore, if that's something that the CRA board wishes to pursue, we need to allocate funds to that particular project. So I think that was $200,000. And I'm going to ask my staff real quick, Ms. Bice, I think, didn't we identify another project for around $50,000? They were doing the Founders Park artwork, okay. That's it, I'm done. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think, so if I'm understanding correctly, what we're talking about here is we're gonna, as the way the budget looks right now, we're gonna have a little over $1 million available to add these items, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think that virtually everything that's been identified here by staff is worthwhile for us to do. I think it's all valuable and should stay on the list of things for us to accomplish. For my purposes, looking at each of these, I think where we get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of improving the CRA, the existing CRA, would be the Iguana parking lot improvements. While I understand that's a huge project at $792,000, I think that's a huge parking lot that would be beneficial from my perspective to bring on par with what we've done in the other parking lot at John. If there is money remaining, then I think I also am eager to see us continue funding CRA projects on the other side of Cape Coral Parkway. So I know parking is vital throughout the CRA and is going to, I think, continue to be a challenge moving forward. So I would say if we can do the Iguana parking lot and there are funds remaining, for my purposes, we have two parking lots on the Vincennes in Lafayette that we can improve and gain some spaces from. And it looks like if we were to take on just parking lot one, that's a $190,000 project, but we would be gaining 20 parking spaces. Obviously, if there were enough funds remaining after the parking lot that we could do the other parking lot, that would be my desire as well. I think for me, of everything here, which again, I think it's all extremely important, if I had to prioritize and spending just over $1 million, those two are the ones that I would like to see move forward.
Madam Chair, may I just offer a little bit more information? It might be helpful in your discussion. So full disclosure, the Iguana parking lot, we have been in informal conversations with the development community, which has expressed an interest in pursuing a development on that property. As you know, there isn't a whole lot of vacant space in the CRA, and so opportunities for redevelopment exist where we currently have surface parking lots. And so the conversations that we had with this particular developer as recently as, I would say, 35 days ago, and we will have these conversations with any developer, that expresses an interest, is that obviously we want to replace any parking that we lose and actually gain some parking spaces. And so our desire has been that we would continue to move forward with. Okay, thank you. That we would favor structured parking as called for in your redevelopment plan. And we would provide incentives for developers to construct structured parking throughout the CRA, and the Iguana Mia parking lot would be one of them. And so Ms. Bice just whispered in my ear that the developer that we've been have been having meetings just sent an email that said that he is intending on submitting a formal unsolicited proposal within the next couple of days to us. So I just want you to have all of that information, because I think you need to have that in your decision making, knowing that there is interest in the development community to develop on that site.
Go ahead.
That would mean that it might be more advantageous for us just to kick that down the road and see what happens rather than investing any money in it ourselves.
That would be my recommendation. You have some money set aside in your budget at my request at the beginning, when we put together the budget this year, to squirrel away some money in the event, because that property right now is owned by the city, free and clear. In order to package that site for development, my recommendation has been that the CRA board purchase that site from the city, and then you guys would take ownership free and clear. And I have to work with the city council, with the city attorney's office on that, because your redevelopment plan does address how you deal with real property. And so we'd have to work that out, but the intent was that CRA would essentially obtain ownership of the property, and then we would package that property as part of a incentive package for a developer to build a mixed-use development on that site.
And just so I'm clear, we're only talking about the parking lot space, the business.
Only the right.
Business structures would remain, correct?
That is correct. That is not, that's privately owned property, and so the city owns the parking lot. And so one of the reasons why we've been acquiring or looking to acquire more smaller vacant properties throughout the CRA is because we know that if this property moves forward, this development scenario moves forward, that we're going to need to replace those parking spaces that we're going to lose from Iguana Mia on a short-term basis. And so that's why we've been trying to boost the inventory of public parking spaces within the CRA in the event, because we know redevelopment is going to happen at some point on those parking lots. That's why this board exists. This particular scenario may not come to fruition, but you know what? I am confident that there'll be another one shortly thereafter.
If I may, what is your projected timeline for that to happen? If that person moves forward with his proposal, are we looking at a year, 2 years, 5 years? The only reason I ask is because that parking lot has been a flood area as soon as it starts rainy season, and the businesses around there have had an enormous issue with that. It's troublesome for their customers. So is there a way, instead of spending $800,000 or whatever that number was, close to $800,000 for everything, is there some way we could Band-Aid it until the new project came?
So that I'll have to ask our Public Works Director that question, but in that scenario, I would not recommend using CRA dollars for that purpose, because that to me is more of a maintenance function, which is technically not an allowable expense of the CRA. That really falls under the purview of City Council.
Right, so is that a possibility?
Let me ask Mr. Ilchizen if he is aware of any quick fixes that can be done, at least certainly to address the flooding issue.
Well, any quick fixes would be to, we could send our operations staff down there and TV all the lines and see if there's any blockages, any tree roots, any pipe separations. If none of those are found, then what we would do as part of the improvement of the overall parking lot, we would enhance the drainage and provide more inlets, more outfalls, you know, more places for the water to be taken up. The only thing that you could do, you know, like I said quickly, if there's no blockages or infrastructure failure, would be to create some elevation by adding additional asphalt to create like some crowns in the parking lot. But if you're going to go ahead and embark upon redoing the parking lot, adding that, then it just becomes a waste. So you try to incorporate that as part of the project.
So ultimately, I don't know if this development scenario will come to fruition, but knowing that there is serious interest in the site, and I do say serious because I have been meeting with this one developer now for at least a year, and I will tell you that it is a reputable developer who does a lot of business throughout the state in redevelopment areas. Does business throughout the city here in Cape Coral, and has this particular developer has it's definitely beyond the conceptual stage. I will tell you that this developer has expended some funds. I don't want to say a considerable amount, but they have engaged the services of an architectural and engineering firm to take each of the ideas that we've discussed a step further. So again, I think this developer is not merely kicking the tires. I think there's some serious interest in moving forward with development, but that is no guarantee, commissioners, that it will ever see the light of day.
Just as a follow-up, the other parking lot at Big John's,
Big John's.
Is that also city-owned as well?
Yes, and that was completed last fiscal year.
Okay, and is it anticipated that likewise we are going to see a developer come along at some point and want to do the same type of thing there, mixed use with ground floor, a couple?
I think at some point in the future, yes. It's not happening today, and there could be a variety of reasons for that. I think that the Iguana parking lot is better positioned for redevelopment sooner rather than later, as opposed to Big John's.
Okay.
I have a
Can I,
question.
oh, I'm sorry.
I thought at one point in time, did we talk about putting a parking garage at Iguana's, or was that before the Cove came along that was supposed to do a parking garage and give us some spaces?
I know prior to my arrival here in the city, the CRA did have discussions about building structured parking. Prior to my arrival, it was discovered that we did not have sufficient sewer capacity to handle any type of development. And the decision was made by the CRA board to basically put any sort of structured parking on hold, and that we would, the number one priority of the CRA would be to move forward with the replacement and upgrading of the CRA main sewer line. And as you remember, initially that project was going to be funded through a loan from the city to the CRA in order to design and construct that sewer line. And there was, if I'm not mistaken, there was an interlocal agreement that was in place between us, but then we received federal funding, and you often hear me refer to as ARPA. And so we decided that we were going to utilize the ARPA funds for that project, which in turn freed up the money that you were going to spend on debt service for the sewer line, and we applied that instead to the Cove at 47th, in order to basically incentivize the project by buying parking spaces. I think in the Cove of 47th, we were essentially buying 125 parking spaces for use by the public in that parking garage. And our operating method right now, in all of our discussions that we've had with developers, to include Bimini Square, has been, you know what, we might be able to delay building our own parking structure by working with developers to get them to provide parking capacity, public parking capacity within their development. So that's what we've been doing. So that's why we haven't really been discussing moving forward with building our own structured parking garage. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we've got other options before us to include, again, maximizing surface and off-street parking spaces using existing land before we recommend going vertical with our own parking garage.
Go ahead, Jim.
That was a discussion before, and the sewers improvement has been taken care of through the rescue funds. If we continue to have success as a city and as a CRA, parking is going to continue to be a growing need, yes? And we don't, in the CRA, at least in that area, we're kind of, we had discussions earlier, there's not a lot of, doesn't seem to me, would be a ton of options in terms of that size of space big enough for a parking garage that are left. And we're talking about a piece of property that you said we already own outright. I mean, is it worth re-entering that discussion about maybe pursuing building our own parking garage on that property ourselves and not putting it through?
Well, let me say this. In my opinion, I do not believe that building a standalone parking garage is the highest and best use for property, especially in the CRA. What you're trying to do is you're trying to maximize mixed use on a particular site. So in an opportunity that may present itself, such as Iguana, where we could end up netting a couple of hundred parking spaces, not all of them will be made available for the public, but let's say, for example, that in a development scenario for that location with a private developer, we pick up 200 public parking spaces. In addition, we pick up residential units, we pick up some retail spaces. Now we're not maximizing the use of that land just for parking. We're getting less parking, but we're getting other important land uses that we need within the CRA. And so I think that that's the.
How many parking spots do we have there now then?
I'm sorry?
How many parking spots are there in that lot now? Anybody?
I know.
I didn't know there was gonna be a test.
No, not off the top of my head.
We'll get that answer for you.
We have all,
It's more than 100, I know that.
yeah, we have all the parking counted.
Yes, and so again, I will tell you that the discussions that I've had with this interested developer will end up netting more parking spaces than what's there now, public parking spaces. And then, of course, they would provide parking for their residents and the retail that will go into that particular development.
Is there a way for us to find out how much the Band-Aid would cost in the interim? And can we work with the city to do that? Public Works would be able to do that portion. It wouldn't be out of our budget because we can't maintain.
That's correct. So we can
But
find
if you
out.
could put that in your budget, then I'd be
Yes.
happy to put that whole project aside for now, since we have somebody that's going to do a bigger development there.
So if we are pursuing a maintenance project as opposed to a complete rehabilitation project, that is something that I will certainly pursue under the city's budget and not under the CRA's budget.
Go ahead.
While we're on the parking stuff here, for the two lots on Lafayette and Vincennes, right on the corners, would it be possible to purchase those now and then not develop them until later?
So you beat me to stole my thunder. I had
Good
actually
idea,
was going to bring
Greg.
it up later in the agenda. We became aware that those properties were available for sale, so we have reached out to the property owners' agents to express our interest. And this is, of course, non-binding because it has to come back to you anyway. But I think you guys gave me the authority either late last year or early this year to be able to put these non-binding offers in. Staff is in the process of doing that now. If not, we've already done that. If we're able to come to terms, then I'll bring that back to you and for your direction to move forward to actually purchase those properties. We currently have sufficient funds in the existing budget for property acquisition that we could purchase those two lots this fiscal year. So we're okay. I don't think we need to put anything in next year's budget for that.
Do we need to vote on that now?
No, we've extended the offer, but we have not heard back yet. And so once we hear back, and if I have news to share with you, then I will ask you at your next board meeting then to take the next step. Right now, there's nothing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Mrs. Tate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike, median or the sidewalk on Miramar. I have some questions. So currently, we have one on the other side of the street, and there is no bike path because there's a sign in the middle of the road, or the artwork in the middle of the road that says bicycles use this part of the road. So if we were going to do a sidewalk there, do you anticipate a bike lane on either side? Would there be enough room?
We would have to check the geometric and see if there's enough room to have you're talking about a dedicated bike lane?
I'm talking about a dedicated,
So right
like we
now it's
have on
considered,
any
right now it's
two-lane.
considered like an on-street bike path, and so it's like it's
Right,
shared.
it's shared with the
yeah.
drivers, which is
So we
extremely
would have to
dangerous.
we would have to check the clearances and the widths of each travel lane and see if there's
And
enough
see if we
room
could do it.
to.
And who paid for the original sidewalk on the other side of the street?
I don't have that information at this time.
I
but
just don't know if it came out of CRA funds or not, so I'd like to know that.
Okay.
I would support that. I'm very concerned about that part of the road. As a council member, I get constant complaints about kids on that side of the road because they leave in the morning on that side and the buses drop them off on that side, so they don't use the other side of the road. So I would love to see sidewalks. Also with Madison Square opening, it would really benefit because most of those seniors are not going to drive and they are going to be walking, so only having a sidewalk on one side. So I think that project is really does have merit. And we currently have Founders Park in this budget, and we are making improvements. And I know you sent me an update, but can you update the board on where that is on all of the
Sure, I
Founders Park?
believe, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I believe we have, based on the input that you gave us for design, we are finalizing the design and it should be going out to bid. So we have $250,000 to fund the hardscapes and the landscape improvements there at the park. Remember, the dock was not part of the design. Both the CRA board and the city council's request. What we did not include in the initial budget to you was funding for a signature public art piece. As Mike showed you earlier, the design contemplates a focal point there on the site. And so that's why we were requesting to put in this upcoming year's budget some money, $50,000 for public art.
And what happened to the art piece that they were going to put in the roundabout?
So that is moving forward. My understanding is that we have signed the appropriate POs with the artists. The site has been cleared, and it is ready for construction.
And all of the landscape that's around that roundabout, is that all staying or is that
I
movable?
think that was already removed, is it not?
Yeah.
Doesn't
I
look
think
like
in your
it.
report, there's a photograph in your monthly update that shows that the landscaping has been removed.
Okay, and another question I have, Mike, on the median landscape at Waikiki. We're going to be building a westbound bridge, and all of that part of the parkway is going to be redone. I spoke to transportation today, and they're going to, in Lee County, they're going to be working on all that, so I would see that that would all get ripped up by the time we finish it, and then they start the westbound. I don't see that little piece as making any difference when they're going to rip it up again, so I wouldn't be able to support that. The Iguana parking lot, I believe that the chairwoman is correct. That needs a Band-Aid quickly because the rains are coming in June, and that parking lot is a mess. And I get tons of complaints, and I know Linda gets tons of complaints. So anything that you can do there would be extremely helpful. I definitely don't want to spend any money personally on traffic signal painting. I don't see that as a benefit. And as much as
Can we talk about that real quick?
we can,
All right, so the CRA has expended, at least on 2 projects, you've spent a considerable amount of money on the streetscapes and
Yes.
the traffic lights. And in fact, this year, I think we spent, correct me if I'm wrong, was it $80,000 to go back and repaint all of our streetlights? The one thing that we didn't address are these galvanized metal mast arms that kind of stick out. So we suggested it because you've already spent all this money on beautifying the existing streetscape. and yet we haven't addressed those. So that's why that's in there.
I understand that, but I'm just looking, if I've got dollars and cents, that's just not where I want to put it.
Understand?
Could we go back to that point of order? But I don't understand the color scheme. I guess what I'm having difficulty with, when you look at the CRA, you've done some streetscape. So whether you like it or not, somebody selected a theme. So now you have the light poles, you have the
themes, yeah.
trash cans, the benches, the thing. So how does that green, black, and what was brown lend itself to that silver color that we've already painted the decorative poles? That's the part I didn't understand.
Right, so-
In other words, at the pedestrian level, in that, it's when you hit, like you said, the intersection where it's the cars and now it's the mass arms over the roadway, not on the median, or not
Well, it's the
median,
whole-
but on the right way.
Well, frequently, it's the whole thing. Whenever you go into an area and you do a streetscape, you typically also provide treatment for the mast arms and the traffic control devices. In this particular case, what we've got going on in the CRA is we actually have multiple themes. We have a theme for 47th Terrace, which seems to be more of a modernistic, futuristic theme with a lot of like stainless steel. So we have that. Then Cape Coral Parkway has a different look, more of like the more traditional, semi-coastal street lights and we just repainted them
That green.
bright green. And then I think we even have something different. Don't we have something different on Lafayette?
Yes, Lafayette
and
has
so
the
we don't-
oldest poles.
And so we don't have a unified theme throughout the CRA at all. And then you throw in the mast arms, so we're kind of all over the place.
Well, in fact, I think my point is the acknowledgement that it's not me. We don't have a unifying theme.
We do not.
So I agree, I think we should, but then likewise, when you get the big infrastructure, the idea is not necessarily to make it pretty, it's how can you make it invisible somewhat? And that's when the greens and the blacks lend themselves, because they're not pronounced, they're in the background a little bit. And I just think my point is long-term for the CRA, we should probably think about down the road examining both design as well as functional, essentially a design district. I don't want to get too far into architectural standards, but we already are. And right now it seems to be a mishmash that we should probably control now. Like you said, the last, I don't know how many weeks or so, I've just been driving it, and I see the CRA as about 4 or 5 different small planning areas of how it's connected and how it's not.
If I may, that's how it was
Yeah, with that,
presented back then. That this would be the entertainment district, this would be a different district, that would be another district, and there would be it would
But
be
my only
4
thought is,
different
and
places.
the design style of both the hardscape, the landscape, and then eventually the private initiated developments that whether you like it or not, they're developing a style for our community. So is that, in other words, as we start now shepherding that through, and it goes back to the comment about city parking lot, when we're making deals with developers like that, we have to understand that there's certain design principles we just want to fight for.
And so you do have in the South Cape zoning district, if I'm not mistaken, there are where's my street? I know I saw them around here.
There are design standards.
So there are design standards within the South Cape zoning district. That's a little different from what you'll find in most CRAs, where CRAs actually approve their own standalone architectural guidelines and themes that are stronger than, I think, this is just my opinion, than what we have in our zoning district. But anyway, but we chose not to go that route. But we still have architectural standards that developers must meet when they build in the South Cape zoning district, and also the Bimini Basin zoning district as well, correct?
That is correct. Mike Struve, City Planning Division. So to answer Mr. Slaughter's question, we do have design standards in the South Cape District like we do in other zoning districts in the city. What we don't do is we don't prescribe a certain architectural style. So we do not require that you develop consistent with a Mediterranean theme or with an old Florida theme or with something that might be a little bit more modern. There are some communities that do that in our area, most notably Estero. They require a Mediterranean or Tuscan theme, and they actually have a design review board that works with the developer. It's a pretty elaborate, elongated process, but that way there is some predictability in terms of building to a consistent architectural style. We don't have that currently. That's something certainly that we could look into if we were directed to do so.
And there are pros and cons to doing that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I've seen them also, like Mr. Serby indicated, in the architectural control districts where you have historic buildings. But we don't, you know, in other words, ours is unique because it's Cape Coral. It really is. So we have that ability, especially where I look at the CRA is, it's old enough that we're already looking at redevelopment, we're looking at infill development, and we're looking at development that's never, on vacant land that's never been built on. And I also look at the CRA, especially when we get into this budget issue, is those, and it's easy to see it when you look at historically of how it was set up, the original core of Central Business District, then that bigger area, which included Bimini, and then the golf course. So again, one of the things you look at that I've thought through this whole series of what are we gonna do, for me, it's almost, what area are we talking? And more importantly, have we understood, as a council member indicated, if different areas have different thoughts and ideas, are we incrementally implementing those things, or are we actually doing it in such a haphazard way that we're not helping matters strategically? In other words, if we look at, the city has how many of the big major areas for parking? You've got Big John's, you've got Iguana, you've got the old military, and then you have some that I would call kind of the medium size down to the small. So of the big three enchiladas, if you're gonna deal something within those areas, not counting 47th Cove, which allows you to do, as you indicated, both as a public-private partnership, but also a flex design. So I'm like you, I don't like to see government giving up its land for one single use that serves a whole bunch of people. And while there's a benefit there, I just think that a flex space, because when you're creating that type of structural design, I think of the one in Fort Myers. There's some city or not city, but municipal architecture that's not the most sightless. And parking structures can be designed not bad, or they can be designed really in areas that I think would be a detraction in our community, especially something right on the roadway. And that's what it's gonna be. It's not gonna be pulled back like some of the other ones. It's gonna be much closer in that canyon effect. So again, what does it look like?
All right, thank you, Tom. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, thank you. Paul Klingon, Director of Capital Improvements. I just wanted to clarify, with the streetscape, when we did 47 Terrace, there was a lot of discussion about the street lights, and there was a decision of that look and feel. And then, just to recall, we're just finishing up Lafayette, adding street lights that look exactly like 47th to match that, with the exception of the ring color.
It was
And
just
then-
different colors.
It's just right. I think the 47th is green and Lafayette is
I think it's
blue.
like a kind of
So
coral
the
color.
CRA decided to keep 47th and Lafayette similar looking. And then the decision-making on Cape Coral Parkway, we did look at taking down those street, like the older ones, and matching what was on 47th, but it was very expensive. And the decision was to repaint them the green, change the bulbs, LED lights, etc., to keep that theme on Cape Coral Parkway.
Right, thank you. You had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to finish my thoughts, just so I could finish.
Sorry for interrupting you.
No, you didn't. It was no problem. I can see your point on the lights, but I say if we're going to do one little area, then let's just do what everybody wants to do and make the whole thing cohesive. Because you're Band-Aiding each one. Every time, well, we're going to paint these lights the silver, we're going to make them black, but we still got this problem and this problem. Let's take our $1 million and fix that. Maybe we make the whole thing cohesive. Because I don't like any of the other proposals, like the Hampton Inn driveway thing. That's all vacant land. That's going to get developed when that corner gets developed. And it's useless to put these little median strips in. The Lafayette Street extension, that one is extremely useless. Those four plexes down there, that's just what Mr. Mazurkowitz calls on interim use, and we know that those are all gonna go. So I wouldn't support any of those projects. And I would support, if you're gonna take $1 million, let's make it count. The only reason I really would push for Miramar is safety. We've got too many kids on that road with all those apartments back there and all those rentals back there. That is really a safety issue. And if not the CRA, that's why I asked you who paid for it, because I don't think at the time it was the CRA, but whatever, that road really does need sidewalks. And when we talk about putting sidewalks where schools are, that road has a ton of kids on it, and it really scares me. I know that you remember just a couple weeks ago, we had to go tear down some landscaping because kids were coming out of that and right onto the road, and somebody almost hit a kid. So I'm really supportive of that. And if in fact it is the situation where we have all these different colors and situations in the CRA, although I can tell you that we did it piecemeal because that was how it was done way back when, and you know, the mayor always makes fun of me when I give history lessons, but that's how we did it. You know, the Cape Coral Parkway was one project way back when. Lafayette was another project. You know, I don't know how many times we changed bricks in the downtown, and we're still working on bricks in the downtown. So put your money where the biggest bang for your buck is, and if you all think that the poles and the whole lighting thing is the most important, then that's what this council should do. But with 45,000 cars going down Del Prado every day and looking at that traffic light, I doubt anybody looks at the silver. You probably see it when you're looking around as a person looking in the CRA or moving here, maybe, I don't know, but there's so much traffic on that road that your eye doesn't go to the silver, your eye is whether it's the light is green or red, so you can get through the intersection. But I get the aesthetics part, so if you want the aesthetics, then spend your money and make it worthwhile instead of do all these little projects. And then I just strongly urge you to consider doing the sidewalk on Miramar. Thank you.
You're next, then you.
I would echo the concerns about the streetscape next to Hampton Inn. That vacant property, is there any discussion about development of that vacant piece of property that's underway, or?
We contacted them, I want to say about 7 or 8 months ago, and asked about either purchasing it or leasing it from them. They told us that they were planning on developing it and were not interested, not even in a short-term lease. We were looking at like a 3-year lease to provide some off-street parking. They said they had every intent on developing that property.
All right, so for that reason,
So-
I would hate to see us go dump a ton of money into streetscape and sidewalk widening and all of that, and then find, you know, they're gonna come in behind us, and at some point, I look at that piece of property and think somebody's got to develop that at some point, just because.
Yeah, you would have thought they would have been developed by now. It's a fantastic piece of property.
I would echo those, I would not be in favor of that.
So if I'm hearing everybody, it sounds like, just so we can maybe help, so this 47 streetscape in front of Hampton, the Lafayette,
No, I don't think we're there yet, Mike.
I don't think
No, no, I was-
we're either.
Yeah, I think because we still have board members that haven't weighed in yet.
no,
I was just thinking, if we are gonna do, I know we talked about it in the past too, and you brought it up earlier, the rebranding part of it, especially 47th and the CRA, I think that might be something that we wanna look into, one, because it's cheaper, and two, if we do the rebranding after we tie everything together, what if we wanna change it? And that might also be good if they're gonna do the development at the Cove and all that kind of stuff. It might be good for us to get in there beforehand, rather than kind of going in afterwards and trying to, you know, we can change the script beforehand, but if they already get in there, then we have to kind of work around what they have, so it might be
Honestly,
advantageous to.
I don't
rebrand.
think we need to rebrand 47th Terrace. It's only my opinion. I don't know about anybody else. Everybody knows 47th Terrace. They know they're going to go to Backstreets or Dixie or whatever. They're going to 47th Terrace. And the Cove at 47th was probably named that because it's on 47th. I think to spend, I don't know how much money it would cost to hire somebody to do a study to figure out what we're going to brand this, and then to change everything again. I would save my money there and put it on buying property and making a couple of more parking lots, buying a piece of art for Founders, and dressing up and finishing what we start. We start stuff and then we stop.
That's how we have all the mixed match lights.
And we need to continue and finish. We're gonna put a beautiful development in Bimini Basin, and you look across the parkway and you have ugly Palm Tree Boulevard. Dress that part up. Fix that. Finish Lafayette Street on the other side of Winn-Dixie, on the other Lafayette Street. Fix those sidewalks, dress that section up, and let's finish a section at a time rather than, let's change the name. No, I don't want to change the name, but that's just me. Anybody else?
I feel like the section by section thing is kind of what we've been doing already, though. If we look at it from like a higher, look at it from above as a whole big piece instead of just the different portions, I think that might be where we're trying to get, or where we're all saying different things, but I think we're trying to get to together.
I don't know, it's not up to just me, it's up to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so from me listening to what everybody's saying, I definitely think that we should buy property where possible, those 2 lots that you were saying. I'm with Greg on that. So to me, that's a priority. The more I've talked to other people myself about the sidewalk on Miramar and with that project going in with the senior citizens, I think that's also a priority. I too don't believe in extending Coronado. If anything, I probably would rather see it extend the project from by where the deck is on the other corner to Del Prado. The poles, I don't know, are those Cape Coral or are they Lee County responsibility for or what we're talking about? And if we decide to paint them, can they be responsible for painting them? And then I would rather see more money going into more art. I love the interaction on the buildings with the angel wings and taking pictures and stuff like that. I would like to see more of that kind of stuff in South Cape. But definitely purchasing more land for parking. If we can Band-Aid, if there's an issue with the iguanas that you're saying, until we know what's going on with the developer. And what else? I don't know. I wish I had that problem of how to spend $1 million. Why not myself?
Madam Chair, can I
It
ask
doesn't go
one thing?
very far.
Yeah, but I'm just, but those are the projects that I would mark as a priority. Rebranding, I have mixed emotions on that, because we have logos and we call it South Cape. Everything to me is just called South Cape, so I don't know I've got mixed emotions about that. I think that's it.
I just have one thought, with your art the art that we're trying to do at Founders Park, Love Locks with the Youth Council, that might be a really great project for Founders Park. And they're struggling to get the art itself done. So it might be a good community project, and that would be a great place for it because it's an entertainment area. There's enough going on Beach Parkway, in the park there, that maybe we think about doing that.
Let me ask, I know we were working with
Carrie?
we were working with J.C. Park, correct?
Yes, that's where
How
we're
far
working.
along are we with the Love Locks projects at J.C. Park?
Yeah, they're still working on finding an artist and putting it together because I've been trying to help them. We have Family Hardware that's willing to help pay for it and also help them with the locks and the keys. So we have that component of a company that's already in Cape Coral willing to do it, and they're in this ARA on 47th Terrace. So that's why I just thought about maybe we put it in there. I mean, it would be really cute to have in Founders Park. That's just a thought.
So your thoughts, I don't know how far you are along with J.C. Park, so.
I'm going to work, we've been working with the youth council, so I'd have to speak with them.
I have a
don't wanna
question
step
before
on
we
their
go any
toes.
further. Can somebody please explain what a love lock is?
Sure. So it started overseas, and it's these little, it's a lock.
It's a lock.
It's a lock. And they used to put them on fences of bridges and things in memory of a person that they lost or somebody they love or whatever. And they used to lock it on there, and it would lock forever unless somebody bolt cutted them off. Well, they went all over bridges and everything, and they got to be kind of a nuisance on some of them, so some of them came down. But instead of doing that on a fence, they were gonna do it on a piece of artwork, like a heart.
They're gonna do a heart.
Heart, put that on it. So it'd be an art in J.C. Park, and it would be, the locks would be able to be locked on those. So it's a better look than on fence over a bridge.
Are they regular locks?
Yes,
Like padlocks?
they bring their own
Like,
lock.
we have them in our church on a fence, and, you know, you're praying for somebody, you put your lock on, but that's what it is. It's like a couple's getting engaged, they buy the lock, they put their name on it, and they stick it on there. And the youth council is doing a heart, we're trying to find an artist for them. There was some concern about would the keys go in the river, and we said no, we had a dedicated box
Right.
for them and everything, but they have been stalled trying to get the artists themselves and what they're gonna make it out of that is going to be sturdy enough. So we've been talking to a couple different artists, Councilmember Hayden and myself have been working on it, because we have the rest of it donated.
Correct.
So, I just thought it might be a good thing, rather than to spend, you know, more money on art piece for Founder's Park. We've got this project, maybe we meld them together.
So you're saying that the youth council would do that project at J.C. Park and also do this one?
No, I'm
No, they
saying
would
rather than
Instead
do it
of-
at J.C. Park,
Oh,
they
instead of
would
J.C.
put it
Park.
at Founder's Park, so you don't spend $500,000 on artwork at Founder's Park.
It would be 50,000.
Or 50,000, whatever you were gonna spend. It's just a thought, only because I don't think this council knew about the Lovelocks, and they are struggling. So maybe, you know, that might give them some other project to work towards with that location. It's certainly a more visible location.
True, that's true.
Just a thought.
Did I think the more the merrier for art stuff too. So if there's more art, that's even better. To add a second one on. And was there? I know that you guys were going to talk about it at the council meeting. Was there did anybody bring up doing the public arts committee or anything like that?
So one of the topics that I'm going to introduce to city council when we go through the budget process and the strategic planning process is that we start putting together a formal public art master plan that actually creates a formal public art program for the city. So I think we need to do that first, rather than create the committee first and then go back and do the plan. Have that as one cohesive plan, assuming council wants to move forward with it. Council could say no. I mean, conversely, you can say, you know what, you want to go ahead and fund a public art master plan for the CRA and fund it yourselves.
What would that cost?
Don't know, I would probably recommend we set aside maybe $200,000 as a placeholder.
Could we put that in next year's budget
You could.
instead of painting poles?
You could, but let me just suggest this, so there might be support on city council, I don't know, I haven't raised this issue with them yet, to address public art citywide. So if the city council is willing to address it, then why would the
Right, then we don't
CRA?
need
I would
to.
think twice about recommending that you set aside money. But right now it's a gamble because I have not had in-depth conversations with council members to see if they even support it. You could always put it in your budget, and we could always do a budget amendment and take it out if you decide not to use it.
Doesn't our budget have to go before city council to be approved anyway?
Yes.
So we can try everything, but then it's up to them to decide. So, if I may, so far, we're talking the sidewalks on Miramar. Does everybody like that?
Yes.
Are we all in agreement on that?
No. One of the things I wanted to do is, you've got so many projects and much different price. I was looking if we can simply get a consolidated list, but most importantly, put it in some type of category. In other words, those things that are purely infrastructure. You might not see it, but when you turn the water on or off, you know whether it's working. Then you get into what I would call beautification, not required, but you get into some of that discretionary. Then you get into some of the artwork and some of the other, and it doesn't seem to be organized well that from a strategic point, I'm comfortable making any discussion. In other words, Mike and Paul went through pretty good what the project was about, but then I have two questions. One is strategically, regardless of what I think, how does that fit into your strategic plan that you guys just updated? Secondly, how do you suspect it fits into our CRA plan? And then amongst ourselves, how do we then weigh all these little things we'd like to do, but in this particular case, we're looking at annually speaking. And that was my concern about where you made the comment about, you know, the fits and starts. Well, that's real life sometimes. You don't get to do it all incrementally, but if we have an understanding of what are long range, high-end CIP projects, what are more shorter range, and what are those things that are probably gonna be one and done annually. You'll see a blip on the budget. You'll see that it was done or not done, like we found out with that 200,000 for the CRA, but it gets pulled off. So you had made at the last meeting, I just want to confirm, there's certain spending that can be rolled over, but there's other spending that needs to be spend it or lose it.
Yes.
And in this particular case, the lose it is what, but more importantly, the spend it, I guess what I'm trying to find out from my standpoint is what would be the priorities that I would look at later on and go, after we review this, I know generally the direction we're going long range. I know some things we're looking at around the horizon, but more importantly, I know in front of me this next year, especially when you break that year into quarters, what's going to be done.
Wow, so you put a lot there on the table for discussion. So let me
Well, it's only $1 million.
So let me first start with accepting the constructive criticism in that we did not identify or group the projects by category. And I'll know that for next time that we do that in terms of infrastructure, beautification, things of that nature. So that's noted. In terms of, do these projects fulfill your redevelopment plan? All of them do. All of them are in keeping with your redevelopment plan. Because again, they're all infrastructure, or they're all aesthetics. So they all fulfill your mission. In terms of how do these projects fulfill or fit into the city's strategic plan, well, that hasn't been adopted yet the new one hasn't been adopted yet by City Council, although City Council has given us direction, and beautification is one of their strategic priorities, as is infrastructure. And redevelopment and economic development and things of that nature. So just in general, they all tie into the bigger picture.
Go ahead.
I think after hearing the discussion today, from my perspective, understanding the direction you said with regard to the parking lot, if we've got $1 million to spend, I think my priorities would be some kind of Band-Aid fix, if it's possible, to that parking lot as it relates to drainage.
All right, well, let's take that one off the
Take that
table
one out.
because you're not going to use CRA funding for
Okay,
No.
all right. Then secondly, it would be to purchase the parking lots to the extent that our monies go, to purchase
Okay.
that land.
Let's take that off the table
Vincennes and Lafayette.
because I'm not we think we have enough money in this year's budget to accomplish that.
Okay.
Well,
So,
are we talking Vincennes and Lafayette this?
yes, I think there are two lots, one on the south side, one on the north side.
So that'd be to purchase those and possibly then make the improvements to them if necessary, once they're purchased.
I think we have that in this year's budget.
Okay. And for me, the third would be, I think, the Miramar sidewalk improvements on the what would be the north side of that.
Okay, so I suggest we start there and see if there's consensus among the board members to direct staff to include that in the proposed CRA budget for next year, and then we'll bring that back to you next month for a vote.
Can we vote on that now? Just take a general consensus? Is
I don't think
everybody,
we need a voice vote on that. I think that if
we just need to agree.
Well, and if I can speak, the one thing we do need to look at that is make sure it's not in the city's capital improvement plan at all, if it was not
That's correct.
anywhere in there, because you cannot take on any project that was in there within 5 years. So
Is
that
that
needs
in
to
their
come out.
plan?
We don't know.
Mike's shaking his head no.
Our priorities are within 2 miles of schools. This is not.
No. And as
Okay,
Ms.
so we
Tate
can,
said,
we
she wants
could
to
move
find
ahead
out.
with that if we are all in agreement, correct? With the sidewalks?
Yep.
All right. Then I do agree, and the Vincennes and Lafayette, you say, is in this year's budget?
yes,
So we
we're
don't
going to
have
try
to
to
worry
accomplish
about
that in
that.
this year's budget.
Okay. You're gonna Band-Aid Iguana Mia. I think everybody doesn't wanna paint the poles.
Well, that was my question, is Del Prado, and is that county poles or are they Cape Coral poles?
Well, typically, let me just answer the question this way. What typically happens with the Florida Department of Transportation or with the county is that they have a standard product, right? You get the standard galvanized steel pole. If you want to upgrade that, then the community is responsible for funding that on their own. So regardless of who owns it, typically they will give you permission to go and upgrade it. For traffic signals that are on Del Prado, north of Cape Coral Parkway, to include Cape Coral Parkway, I would venture a guess that that belongs to Lee County.
Okay.
And then Cape Coral Parkway is also county right-of-way, correct?
From the base of the bridge to Del Prado.
Okay, so anything west of Del Prado is city?
So we can put that in a maybe, painting the poles. To add the 10 additional parking spaces, or however many parking spaces that is on Vincennes Street,
I'm for that.
where $50,000, I think we can go along with that. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Could we, on the screen, are we pretty much all working from this kind of list?
I'm looking through my papers here.
There you go, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in other words, all I did was I punched some numbers on them, so maybe if we're kind of following this, hit the bullet number and then go from there.
I mean, we're not even to $500,000 yet. Or maybe we are at $500,000 with the sidewalk, yes. Okay, so we're at $500,000, we still have $500,000 to go.
Yeah, I'm fully comfortable stopping right here and let's see how things play out.
Well, but I've got to put a budget together, so I got to know.
Yes, we need to know.
Either you tell me where to put the money, or you're trusting me to put the money somewhere.
I would do that too.
And I don't know, the conversation isn't going my way so far this afternoon, so.
Can we get a consensus to put it in a budget line that is used for purchasing additional land?
You can.
That's
You can put it in property acquisition.
property acquisition, I think. Now, all of this, again, presumes that we can take the Iguana parking lot Band-Aid fix off our plate.
Yes.
What was the other thing?
The land on Vincennes
Oh,
and
yeah,
Lafayette.
the land purchase out of this, and I also, if I understood, the artwork at Founders can be taken.
Well, we will explore this option, which is to do the love locks at Founder's
Right,
Park.
and even if that doesn't happen, what are we talking, $50,000 more?
So I
But if
think
we're
the
going
The
to,
rest would be land acquisition from my standpoint.
if we're going to buy the property on Vincennes and, the Vincennes and Lafayette, those two corners, the $255,000 that they've estimated that it would cost to improve it to a parking lots,
So out of this.
that could come out of this budget that we're working on,
That's
correct?
an option. So you have money in this year's budget for the acquisition.
Right, and we can
There's no money
improve
for
it
the
in-
improvement.
Yes.
So you could use the balance of your 500,000+ to fund the improvement starting October 1.
Yeah, my
then-
strategy is that if we are successful in acquiring those properties this fiscal year, then I would come to you with a budget amendment to transfer funds out of that line into a capital account to fund the improvements.
Okay, I like that.
But if you just want to move forward with these two projects, which is the Miramar Street sidewalks, correct?
Right.
The parking, Vincennes, restriping, to get the additional on-street parking, and then putting the balance into property acquisition, we could certainly do that.
No, we're going to acquire the property today, and we're going to pay the $255,000.
Well, you could do that as well. What I'm suggesting is,
We have money out of this.
yeah,
To buy the property,
yeah,
not to
let me
improve it.
exhaust money in this year's budget,
From this year.
because right now I've got two properties that we're looking at purchasing, right? Those two. Absent those two, Right now, I don't have any other prospects because
Right.
people are being extremely unrealistic in the CRA in terms of what their properties are worth. So I don't have any other viable options at this point. So it may be that I have enough to move forward with purchasing it using this year dollars, and again, coming back to you for a budget amendment so we can begin the design and construction using today's dollars versus FY23 dollars.
Okay.
And wouldn't it be better to have stuff in the budget that we don't need than vice versa? Like, it's easier to take stuff out than it is to add it later on. So if we left, like, especially, what was it, the art thing, and then the special events, if we left those kind of where they were, or left the, the Founders Park artwork budget there, if we end up not using it, it's easier to, like, figure something else out to do with it than
Right,
add it
you do
later.
a budget amendment.
Right. So are we all on the same page?
Not quite.
All
You're
right, where else do we need to be?
I think you're getting there, right? It's clear to me that Miramar Street sidewalks and Vincennes on-street parking, there's consensus on moving forward with those two.
Okay. Is it possible, the Palm Tree Boulevard streetscape, whatever we're going to do there, is it possible to do that over years?
Possibly.
Because that's too much money. We don't have that much money.
So that is a lot of money, and I think the danger is, I think the language earlier was we're doing things in fits and starts.
Yeah.
And, what if we're only able to do one block, the right way, which includes curbing and gutter and new landscaping, and then we can't get to the other sections for another 5 years. So it'll just be another section where it looks like we started something and we didn't finish.
Again, if I could add, even if you go to, I think it should be, if who's ever working the PowerPoint, pop a couple slides forward. And if you go to the median on that landscaping, yeah, stop right there. Even I was looking at it yesterday and I thought Palmetto, Coronado, and I thought strategically, each on the side of the golf course, but we haven't decided longer term what would happen. So my thought, it's harsh for those folks who might live on one side or the other, but have we already decided? In other words, if you look at the functional classification, and then you look at what's already on the map, that's already part of a current 5-year, meaning in green. Why would we bite off the other end when we don't even know what's gonna happen in that middle? And long term, the functional of that in red, which is Palmetto, that may change. That may change by design, and I'm not saying the roadway itself, but the use of that road and the right-of-ways that all abut it, and those curb cuts on the interior might be very different. And that's why I was not supportive at all of the of the sidewalk, of the original one, but hence I asked a question to, I believe his name was Mr. King. And I asked about if that's going to be used again and again, because I'll sneak through that way on the south. It's a neat area. And you think of all the visitors and folks who live south of there that never have to get on Cape Coral Parkway to utilize that park from the behind. So to me, having a sidewalk there, knowing it's not only serving from the function of the district special events, but schools, people who live there, to me, that's what we ought to be doing, is seeing those, not win situations, but you can win-win in a couple different ways. And I just think this is a classic example of why would we bite off a really big ticket when we don't even know what the future use of that area is going to be within the CRA?
Sherry said the bridge.
Well, but
They're talking about the bridge.
If you're talking about Waikiki, we
No,
kind
I'm
of
talking
put that
about that.
aside.
He's talking about using the map, that's,
Tree.
there's a little map excerpt, and you could see the red portion of the palm tree. He was just using that for the discussion.
Yeah, no, I'm not looking at that little arrow. I'm just saying the major road where you see Palmetto and Coronado. And then you ask yourself, if we're already committed on the other roadway in green on a 5-year plan, and to me, I've always considered that road more of a parkway, because it is beautiful. So I kind of agree of, let's finish up that before we bite in the bigger ones, especially since we don't have any idea what the long-term future land use of some of those lands where now the big arrow is in the, within that interior.
Anybody else?
I have one thing. I'm kind of concerned, Mr. Mason kept saying that hopefully the cove, because we all know we were invited to a groundbreaking and due to issues that they had delayed that. Do we really, is there anything we don't know that's going to happen with that?
So I have been in communications with their representatives, and they do intend on moving forward with the project. As a result of construction costs coming in a little higher, they've had to look at some adjustments. However, based on the correspondence I received this morning, it looks like the project is still moving forward
Okay.
with some changes.
I also have a question about the irrigation on Lafayette Street. When we put in the poles and the palm trees and the bump outs, the irrigation was not completed there. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, that is correct. There was never irrigation put down that street
Okay,
to
so if we
those.
were to do that, it would cost $750,000 approximately?
Yeah, the problem with this is that you have the brick paver sidewalks and the exfiltration stormwater systems under that. And there's other utilities there, so the only place we could put it is under the pavement. Then I have to go from the pavement and directional drill to all the landscape planters where we just directional drilled and put the receptacles for the trees and the new lights.
Okay.
So
Is
it's,
there any simple way to irrigate those palm trees other than the bags?
well,
Rain.
but we put no one liked the bags. We used to put the bags and no one liked that.
I didn't think the bags were that offensive. I don't know if
I
anybody
got
does.
an earful and I wasn't even around.
So I will tell you that the city's hiring an arborist, and he's starting on Arbor Day. He mentioned to me that they're experimenting right now in the place where he's at with an underground bag that you cannot see that absorbs the material and then waters it. So he's aware of some technologies that may be a simpler way than the
Okay, then
750.
digging up, yeah, okay. All right, so we'll put that one aside. Does
Well,
anybody
and we
else
can
have
certainly-
anything else they would like to see in here other than just lump it into land acquisition?
Just maybe more money for art.
So I think, if I may just repeat a comment that I made earlier, that there could be some benefit to go after low-hanging fruit that has immediate impacts from a visual perspective. Because sometimes small victories are better than the larger ones, right? And so I think there's a benefit in showing momentum and showing that things are happening. And sometimes you're better off spending $5,000 rather than spending $5 million. So I just want to, again, throw that out there that, you know, we have identified some projects that don't cost a whole lot, but can bring you back some returns. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I don't know about returns, but what about, were we ever told at some point in time when we redid 47 Terrace that we'd have motorcycle parking? For they would not have to take a whole space up? Would that be something else we could do? Some line for, I thought at one time when we were working on the CRA project on 47th, we talked about offering some motorcycle parking.
I think when we were possibly talking about that, there's no room on 47th for motorcycle parking, but we had talked about whether or not in the parking lots.
Right, I don't remember the conversation, I just thought, I don't see it anywhere, and I haven't seen anything. Is that something, if we're gonna reline, that, because we know a motorcycle doesn't need a full parking space, that we could have, just a thought if we're looking for things.
What other, as I'm going through, I think we've covered what are the other low-hanging fruit things that you're looking at? If we're looking at the landscaping on, talk about to Waikiki.
We're not doing that.
Right, there's some suggestion that doesn't make sense given that there's bridge construction. The sidewalks we've approved, the median landscaping on Palm Tree Boulevard and Wildwood, $2.4 million project, that's not low. Juanamia, we've talked about. Traffic signals, what I think I heard is that if we're gonna do them, let's do them all and do them the same, and that seems to be cost prohibitive.
Well, no, I think it's
No,
127,000.
or something. 179.
Was it 170?
Yeah, there was about 60,000 that are on Del Prado. Those are county signals, so we would have to make sure that they would even entertain their signals. But we do have, the balance of the CRA is 112. So when you add the two together, it comes out to like 170.
Would it be weird for us not to do the ones on Del Prado and just do the other ones? Is that like
If we're gonna do them, we should do them all.
That would be my recommendation. It's as simple as going to the county and getting an ILA. And again, they're not gonna fund it. But if listen, they could come back and say no, but in other communities, they typically don't. But then again, you never know.
I mean, it's possible
Can
that
I ask a question to Mike?
of it.
Yeah.
In the packet, I don't know if it was a packet or just doing the research, where I read about Naples. Remember the, I think it was the paint shipping problem? And then they said over time, the problem became every time they did a fix, the fix and the peeling paint was such an eyesore. So from your perspective, obviously, economy of scale, you want to mobilize your people, get it done and knock it out. Is there a way that you would then paint the county but do in reimbursement in advance of that? In other words, or is it simply, there's times where you just simply, if you're working with another community, hey, here's our paint chip, here's what we're going with, and you simply provide that over? Because that sounds like that's what happened in Naples, where that original color got somehow lost. And then they had a mash over time of just not something that looked good.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we've picked kind of the three traditional colors that you would see, which is a brown, a green, or a black. Those colors generally, if you don't stray from them, they're standard in the traffic signal, industry for.
Oh, so they're all to a uniform standard?
Yeah, well, there's not those colors are uniformly applied for signals, right? You don't see blues, yellows, so we pick those colors because they would do it. Now, once we pick a specific color to paint, right, that will fade with time. So when you go there and you actually, if you have damage to the pole, or you have chipping, or you have something that strikes it and causes damage, what ends up happening is the blending of that becomes an issue. So you typically wind up having to do a larger section on the repair so that you basically paint that whole thing. What we've tried to find is, wrapping now is the new thing, right? So we were not able to find a good quote on anybody that's wrapped a mast arm, but if you all fund this, what we would like to do is, before we just go out and paint everything, we'd like to get with some wrapping companies and bring them to a mast arm and say, okay, how could you do this? Could you do it in one section, or is it going to be 5 little pieces because they only come in 3-foot or 5-foot wide sections? How could we accomplish this, and what would it look like? And then consider that before we just go and paint it.
From the bridge to Del Prado, and then from Del Prado to what Coronado is the end of the CRA. So you're only saying, from your perspective, you're responsible for the link from essentially the West Coronado all the way to Del Prado. And then how many poles are there from Del Prado to the bridge then?
So if you look at this list, on Cape Coral Parkway, there's one at Vincennes, 10th, Coronado, 47th, 6th, and Palm Tree. So we have 2, 4, 6 that are on Cape Coral Parkway, and then there are 3 of them on Del Prado, and one being the intersection of Del Prado and Cape Coral Parkway.
So is there, from our end, would we be looking at, if there was support, doing that, but then inquiring as to what would be the interlocal agreement with Lee County then to paint their poles, which are in, it sounds like both state and then county right away?
Yes, so it's county right away, coming at the base of the bridge to Del Prado. So on Cape Coral Parkway, from the base of the bridge to the intersection at Del Prado is county, and then Del Prado heading north is county.
Oh, so there's no state until you get to Pine Island, all right.
So you know, what I heard was, you know, obviously you'd like to do them all. You know, to do that, we'd have to fund them all, but if for whatever reason we couldn't do the ones on Del Prado, which I tend to agree with the executive director, I think the county, as long as we're paying for it and we're gonna maintain it, I don't think they would object to us beautifying them. But again, yeah, there is a real possibility they could say no. But if you want to do it all and have the same theme, then you know, we would be looking to fund that 170.
Thank you.
So is that something we want to add to our mix?
I'd rather do the wrap than the painting.
Yeah, well, definitely, but
And I always err to the side, if we're going down this road, I always err to the side of doing everything in black, but maybe, I don't know, this one, the brown is the only one I don't really like.
no, I'd go with the black myself, but
Either black or
I don't
green,
even know if we're there yet.
Yeah.
So let me just say this in support. Actually, all the colors are fine. But let me just say this in support of the brown. If you've never been to Hilton Head in South Carolina, they use brown. And it's very nice. It's almost park-like in setting. So either one, either the darker green or the black or the brown, it works no matter what, especially like in an urban downtown setting. I would stay away from, for example, the color that we picked for 47th Terrace, I'm sorry, for Cape Coral Parkway, which is kind of like that really bright green. I would stay away from something like that in favor of a more subdued color, like earth tone, black, brown, or the dark green.
And this picture that we have here from Fort Myers is, we kind of went to that because they have the white pedestrian light. So you can see behind that mast arm and that pole is a white, you know, 10-foot tall. So you can kind of see how the two colors, even if you put it next to a silver or a gray or something else, you know, that black kind of blends.
Can I ask staff a question?
Sure.
With regard to the widening of the Cape Coral Bridge, do we expect that the county is going to take more right-of-way on Cape Coral Parkway? I'm trying to understand.
I talked to them today.
Yeah.
I got a message from the Transportation Deputy Director.
Yeah.
And he said that when they do the westbound lane, they will be reworking all 4 lanes that are coming off the bridge, all the way to the light, if that answers
So
your
the
question.
reason why I'm asking, can you put the photo on the Waikiki median?
Oh.
I'm just trying to understand if we're going to lose any of that right-of-way on Del
Well, this
Prado.
is south of Cape Coral Park.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So would we lose any right-of-way? If we were to move forward with, you know, an $80,000 landscaping project here, would any of it end up being ripped out because of the?
They talked about extending that turn lane, so wouldn't that come right into there?
Well, this turn lane that we're looking at right here.
We're looking south here, correct?
So you're on the other side of Del Prado at
Yeah.
Waikiki. You're not
Right.
on Cape Coral Parkway.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So Del Prado looking south.
We're basically right here
This is that
to the
road.
position,
Except for
we're
everybody
looking
that's
north
going up the
We're looking
bridge.
north.
towards Cape Coral Parkway, and to your left is basically the tiki.
Okay.
No, we're
So-
looking south.
No, that's looking south. There's
Oh.
Holiday Inn Express.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're looking south.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm backwards.
But
Yeah.
about
We're standing basically at the intersection of Del Prado
Del
and
Prado
Cape
and
Coral
Wack-
Parkway, looking south, and the tiki's up to your far right before the bend.
So I'm going to throw this out. If I had a voice and a vote, I would actually, and if it was between, you know, wrapping the mast arms or doing this, I would do this.
I respectfully disagree only because of the uncertainty of everything going on with this bridge thing. I'm just concerned that we're gonna put.
This is north of the bridge. This doesn't really affect the bridge.
Yeah, we're not,
So you know where the Jungle Bird is, so the Holiday Inn is, that's where they're talking about, up that way.
But isn't that whole inn
Isn't
all the way
that
up to
there?
that
That's there.
Isn't there going to be construction with regard to everything that's gonna be going on with the bridge?
This is within the city's right of way. I'm not aware of any impacts to the city right of way from the bridge construction.
yeah.
This is wholly within the city's right away, and all the,
Just south of the parkway?
Yes.
What
Yes.
we're looking at.
Yes,
And
I
that
mean-
yeah, it's right there. The Holiday Inn is where, behind those bushes.
yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because the county would
How
end
would
up,
that be affected by the bridge?
I'm not, I don't believe it was, and I'm not aware of any discussion that it would impact these two medians.
So if that's not affected by the bridge, we can still wrap the poles and do that and be well within our $1 million so far. Can we add up what we've done so far? If I had a calculator, I would.
413 for the sidewalk,
How much money do we have?
50 for
Exactly.
Lafayette.
I want another $2.
And then
for a
255
soda.
for Lafayette Vincennes parking?
No,
No, the Vincent's
That's already
parking
out
of
was
Oh, we yanked it?
in our
that's
budget
already,
this
no,
year.
no, it's
no,
already
we're
budgeted.
getting confused. There's,
Oh, that was this year, and we don't have to,
correct, but there
Correct.
is a project to do on-street parking.
Right,
We're asking $50,000 for that.
right.
which is right across from the two lots on the handout.
No.
No,
Well, no, but you've shown parking all along here as well.
That's the Lafayette St. Vincent's additional parking.
Yeah.
So on this list, what I have is no
got
for the
there,
first
Mike?
one, no for the second one,
Nope,
yes for
nope,
the third one.
No, no.
Well, number 2, I think we were reconsidering, weren't
That's
we?
the-
can we just make a list of what
Yeah,
what
you-
we think we've got?
You're gonna add the second one?
Yes, we'll add that
okay.
in. Let's add that in.
Okay, 413, 80.
I'm having fun today.
$50,000 for the parking on the street, $50,000 for the artwork, that's $513,200. Iguana parking lot improvements, we're not gonna do that one.
Right. We're gonna wrap the traffic signals.
Well, wasn't the big ticket item the sidewalks on the south side of Miramar at 413?
Yes, 413.
So where are we at for how much money?
Like 713?
Oh, we gotta vote on what color. That'll be another hour.
No, I think that's a discussion for another day.
That's another day.
Then leave the rest of the money if we buy more property or something comes in
Right.
higher with everything coming up, the prices.
Could we go back to number 2? The city manager talked about median landscaping. Do we have like a guide now where we generally go, okay, in our medians, what type of trees seem to work,
Yes.
perform well?
Yes, we have 3 themes. We have a coastal theme, we have a mixed theme, and what's the other theme? Tropical mix and shade.
Shade,
Thank you,
that's-
Bill.
Yeah, cool, because I've worked in a couple communities that had urban foresters on staff, and I'll tell you, you know where you work with a good organization only because it's those little things you see over time, and that ability to plant the right tree in the right spot and have it perform well.
So we'll come to you at a later date to select a theme,
Okay. And the colors.
the colors.
I really don't care, whatever you all decide.
All right, do we have anything, are we sure we're okay and we're on the
So
same
let
page
me
here?
do this, so I know when to cut my losses. Let me ask our financial services director, Mark Mason, to go over the official count. And then he'll let us know what we have left over to allocate.
Well, he's lucky I actually wrote all this down, I'm telling you.
Thank you,
We
Michael.
just went right through it. We've got the Miramar sidewalks, 413, Vincennes, street parking, at 50, Waikiki, and Del Prado, I think it was, or something like that, 80 grand. And then the whole wrapping at 170. If it doesn't come in at 170, it'll be some number less than that, or painting, whichever one it is. And that came out to 713, and I think if you add in the Founders Park, it comes out to 763.
So we're at 763, so now the issue is, where do you want to put the remainder?
Did I hear land?
Land acquisition, and then we can always change that.
I agree.
Budget
Okay,
amendments are, they're good.
all right.
Land acquisition it is. Okay.
So we have what we need in order to put together the proposed budget for you to vote on in May.
We're good.
Are we good? Is everybody on the same page here? We're all good? We're good. All right, moving right along. CRA monthly update report for March.
So, Madam Chair, consistent with our new practice, we've been providing you these monthly reports. I don't have a formal presentation for you. We have staff available in the event that you have any questions related to any of the information that we provided you in that report.
Any questions or concerns? Moving on.
Just one quick question. How long do you think it'll be? I saw it was in the report about getting that person on board realistically.
The person for the
Time for
maintenance?
CR, yes.
Yeah, so it took us a little bit because we had to work with the city attorney's office, and the city attorney's office opined that we could not hire that employee directly. So we have to go through the city's process to hire through Public Works, and then we will charge back the CRA. No?
That was
seems to be the easiest.
that was the initial interpretation that we got. We went back to the city attorney's office, Brian, and we were advised that they said legally they think it could work either way. So our preference would be to have it be a CRA employee, and so our facilities group is in the process of putting out a requisition to hire the employee.
I have a question about that. Who would the person report to? Who do they work for? If it's a Public Works employee, then would it not?
The executive director.
Yeah, it's not a Public Works employee. It's a CRA employee.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to make sure that that distinction is very clear. It's a CRA employee.
CRA employee, do we have to buy equipment for this person then too?
Correct.
So how much is all that going to cost us? And is that in our budget for next year?
Pretty sure we have some used vehicles that we can probably take care of in the short term, and probably no more than $5,000-6,000 tops.
Is he going to have a little vehicle to run around in? Because that'll eat that up
Yes,
right
that's the
away.
vehicle that I was just talking about. Yes,
Or she?
or she. Sorry.
I don't even know what that is. Go.
All right.
Yes.
Health insurance, workers' comp coverage, city or
CRA.
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 This is
CRA
going to be,
has separate health insurance?
You fall under the city's plan. You only have one employee, technically.
Currently.
Are you getting classification or no?
No.
Are not, they're
Be a contract.
contract employee.
We currently have CRA, has CRA coverage? I mean, not CRA, workers' comp coverage?
You have it through the city, yes.
So will that person go through the same interview process and through HR to handle that?
Yes.
Do we have any input on who gets hired?
No, and I would recommend that that is a level of details that you should not be
Okay.
involved in. That's why you have an executive director.
The bylaws basically state that the executive director can hire the employee.
So if you get complaints, if something in the CRA about something, let's just say, we would go to you? Okay.
okay.
Let me write that down. Have
As you
sign
do
it.
now,
Just
as
like-
you do now, you guys are not shy in sharing complaints with me.
Okay. All right, moving right along. Sure.
Pension.
No pension.
No pension.
They don't get
They're
benefits.
not city
really.
employees.
No, it's a contract employee.
Basically a contract employee, and you can put whatever terms you want in there.
Yeah.
But I think in order for us to be competitive,
Correct.
we have to make sure that we offer those benefits.
But can we, well, is Helen a CRA employee?
Yes.
Yes.
She's,
Does she have pension benefit? This I did not understand. That's, from my perspective, that's crap. I think we can do better somehow. Somebody just gotta tell me how. We can't set up a one or two person pension plan.
no,
Correct, you can offer
that's why they're
401.
contract employees.
We could do a
457. I have a 457.
Well, that's voluntary on your part.
That's, yeah. No, the only way they can get pension would be to be a city employee. and then you guys pay back the city for all the work that they do for their time, which would include all the benefits, which would, would include the pension, the health insurance, and all that.
You could offer a 401.
Correct, yeah.
So is that an issue with somebody, because I know a lot of people, to get their foot in the door, they'll take a contract position, and then something else opens up and it's in-house promotion? That would be a concern to me.
It could. It's been an issue throughout the organization where we have contract positions and they're difficult to fill because people want benefits.
Right.
And I don't think it serves our purpose to have, in either of these positions have, and we haven't had so far, but to have any creative situation where we've got a revolving door or where there's just around the corner is a much greener pasture constantly, so that we end up getting people who were rotating through because of the lack of benefits or lack of pension or whatever it is. I mean, I'm certainly not prepared today to, and I probably won't otherwise, to push this issue, but I didn't understand that there was a separation. And I just think that, my personal preference is long-term for the city. I think our employees should have a pension, and to do that, if we have to make them city employees and reimburse, that'd be my preference. I mean, a real pension. I'm not a fan of two-tier employment. I don't think, I don't know, I just think it makes us more competitive and gets better quality people who can be here longer. And if there's a way for us to do that, I'm not interested in throwing a wrench into the entire city works. I'm not interested in standing the city on its head. But if it's a simple enough process, my preference would be for both of these employees to be city employees, and we reimburse the city such that they can take advantage of the economy of scale with regard to pension and health insurance and these other things. We found a way, obviously, to do it with health insurance, and we're covering them under workers' comp coverage under the same blanket scale. I'd like to see us move forward. I would feel better as a commissioner here if we could do the same thing with regard to pension benefits.
So I'm going to put on my city manager hat now for a second. My preference would be not to have them be another city employee because you have a finite life. How many years do we have left?
About 35.
In the CRA? I don't think it's 35 more years.
It's a long time.
No, I think it's a lot less than we think.
2043, 27.
So we've got about 20 somewhat years left, all right? You are a dependent entity of city government. And as the city manager, I would not want to bring somebody on board because basically that employee becomes a city employee in perpetuity. We know that the CRA is going away at some point. We don't, up until recently, you haven't had a whole lot of funding to allocate to particular projects. And so when that employee becomes a city employee, then if something happens within the CRA, then the city's going to have to absorb that position and that funding for that position, and there's an impact to the general fund. So I'm always fighting to make sure that we protect the general fund from any future liabilities or intrusions. So on one side, I would argue against having that employee be a city employee for that reason and a whole host of others that I don't want to get into here. So I would advocate that since this position is being funded by the CRA and is being used exclusively in the CRA, that the position be a contract employee. And if you want to offer benefits like a 401, we could certainly look into that and see if they can come under the city's plan and offer that to that employee. And that would also include...
That is an issue with the city that maybe Jim isn't aware of, that we do have a lot of contract positions, and people will take those positions.
We do.
To get their foot in the door, and then they move out.
And some do, and
that's the
we
way
also,
it is.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, but we also have the alternative that we do have people that aren't interested in working a full 40-hour week, and they come to the city because typically they may work less hours. they may be semi-retired and don't need the benefits and are just looking to stay active. So we've had those employees as well be contract employees. Within city government, you will find that the majority of contractor employees are in the Parks Department. And especially when we had Sunsplash. You know, we would ramp up and hire, especially during the summer season, with a lot of contract employees to work at Sunsplash. But again, I would push back as the city manager in, you know, bringing that liability onto the city.
I would say CRA is going to be around long enough for somebody to invest in I understand with the maintenance position, that might be something that somebody hopes to come into and work less than 40 hours a week. But I don't think our discussions were that it was going to be that. But that might be something that somebody is attracted to because of lesser hours and maybe semi-retired or so forth. I don't feel that way about Helen's position. I guess again, I'm the only one bothered by this, but I'll leave it to the rest of the board. At the very least, I would like us to move forward with getting some kind of, whether we got to do it ourselves or if the city is opposed and the rest of the board is opposed to moving in a direction of making them city employees, I would like to see us do something to offer some kind of retirement benefit for people that if this CRA is going to be in existence for another 20 or 25 years or whatever the number is, I don't know why we can't, we shouldn't, as a matter of good practice.
So we could look into that, and what I would recommend is that you, to the extent possible, because I don't know all the legalities, but to the extent possible that you mirror what the city offers in terms of a 401 for employees. Now, there is an employee contribution, and I want to say it's anywhere between 9 and 11%. So right now, like in Helen's case, she doesn't have a 401, but she's not required to contribute to it either. If we created a 401A plan, then she would have to contribute 9% of her salary to it.
Excuse me, I have a plan, but I really don't want to discuss my plan in public.
Well, no, you,
Yeah, this isn't about
All right,
you as an individual,
all right.
it's you as a position. So again, we can look at that. If that's something, we can build that into the budget and bring that back to you next month, but I need to know that now to factor in that additional cost.
Do the contract employees in the city have any benefits, or are they like a normal contract employee? To me, you pay your own taxes, you set aside your own money for your pension or your 401k or whatever, and that to me is what a contract employee is.
The answer is no, they don't.
Madam
Oh.
Chair,
Maybe health insurance, I just heard.
this might be a conversation you want to have with each individual council member and the city manager rather than, because you're talking about salaries and stuff and
Right,
different.
and that's really not, that would be up to you. But I was just questioning to clarify what a contract employee really is. It's not like a CRA employee could be a contract employee.
They could. Now, let me just confuse it a little further. There are individuals that have contracts. For example, the city manager, the city attorney. I don't know if the city auditor has a contract, but we do have contracts, and those contracts do include certain benefits.
That's part of their contract.
That's part of their contract.
This employee would probably be a contract employee where they pay their own taxes, they pay their own whatevers.
It depends on how we structure. Typically, we typically, when we have contract employees, we withhold their taxes.
Okay. Okay.
But if I was a yoga instructor and I taught at Rotary Park, then I would pay my own taxes.
That might be different.
That would be a different
That would
contract.
might be different.
Yeah, everything is different, but again, that's probably for another time.
But I do need a little bit, again, if this is something that the board is interested in, I need to bake those numbers into the proposed budget, because there is a fiscal impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can put together the budget, proposed budget, that includes mirroring some sort of a 401A
I support that.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
I would like to see that.
Absolutely.
And again, that would, it's a CRA employee, not a city employee.
Okay. All right, are we good? All right, we got anything else? Comments from the board?
Super quick, we've got the art boxes, the utility boxes are being wrapped today. They look awesome. Definitely drive by, and yeah, thanks to everybody
Awesome.
for getting that done. It's definitely makes the area look nicer down there.
And I believe we have a formal unveiling.
April the 15th at
10
10
a.m.
by the Dixie, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything? 10
10
o'clock.
o'clock Friday, April 15th.
No, forget that. It's not going to be long enough for food.
Ixnay.
Do you have anything you want to say, Goya? No? Tom?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I have a couple of things. I just want to thank Fran and Steve Marcino for putting on such a great event in South Cape this weekend. Touch a Truck was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. They had probably 5,000 people, families with kids with their eyes this big, all over the trucks and watching the firemen and getting little fire hats and whatever. They had a ball, and it was wonderful. And it's free for the families. They don't pay anything to come.
They just had the jug set up. if
They
anybody wanted
had
to
their
donate.
little donation buckets set up, and the cause was to give awareness and raise money to Fragile X, which is a part of autism. So it was a great event. Sidecar Treats was our host for the Museum of History, for a little car cruise in. We had fun. Even though it was a cloudy, rainy day, we did have people that showed up. It was a wonderful thing. And to remind everybody that bike night is Saturday. So with that, I'll call for motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Does anybody else have anything before we do that? No? Okay.
Second?
Time and place and next meeting?
Time and place of the next meeting is May 5th, Cinco de Mayo at 3 o'clock, right here in council chambers.
Thank you all.